Hi, I'm Buffy and I talk about movies, and today I'll be talking about Supergirl, directed by Craig Gillespie, I don't know, and starring Millie Alcock, Eve Ridley, and Matthias Schoenaerts. This is the second film in the new DC Cinematic Universe, or whatever it's called at this point, the first being Superman, which I've already reviewed. If you haven't seen my review of it, I'll link it in the description, but TLDR, I liked it quite a bit. Even though I'm super tired of superhero films in general, and I've never been the biggest fan of the character of Superman himself, I thought that film was solid, somewhat whimsical, cartoony, cheesy, just fun overall. So I had my hopes up for Supergirl, and to be honest, I am so tired of female-led superhero films being complete generic slops. So when I saw who was directing this film, my hopes grew even further. I've enjoyed every Craig Gillespie film I've seen, I, Tonya, Lars and the Real Girl. Hell, I even fucking liked Fright Night. It had its charm to it as far as I remember, you know? But most notably, I really enjoyed I, Tonya as the character study it was, and I hope that we would get a compelling character exploration for Supergirl as well, especially since the potential for a complex character was certainly there. I really wanted this one to work, but it really didn't for me personally. Now, to begin with, I'm gonna straight up lead with the fact that my negative review has nothing to do with Millie Alcock's performance and appearance, and the fact that internet weirdos now are trying to claim that she is ugly is so fucking insane to me. Just because they don't like when women playing superheroes start talking and find them annoying for some reason. I mean, these weirdos' obsession with criticizing every woman that's ever played a superhero based on their looks and level of how much they get annoyed when they start talking and saying completely normal human things is unfathomable and warrants a separate video, which I'm certainly not going to make. Not today, baby. So I'll just say that I will be judging the movie and performances as the movie and performances, and also say that Millie Alcock fits literally every beauty standard that's fed to us through media, so I don't know what the fuck these assholes are talking about. So anyway, I will start with performances because I thought that was the strongest part of the film, to be honest, actually. I thought Millie Alcock was a pretty convincing Supergirl, even if the writing kept something to be desired. Eve Ridley, on the other hand, was pretty hit or miss, to be honest, but I really do not blame the young actor for this, since a lot of her lines were kind of unrealistic and over the top. It seemed that sometimes the direction for the actors wasn't very clear. For example, Matthias Schoenaerts, he plays the villain in the film, and it seems as if he's supposed to be a very cartoony villain that would fit in a more campy James Gunn film. He was hamming it up like there's no tomorrow. And he's a great actor in general. If you've seen his other films, you will probably agree with me. Rust and Bone being one of them, Mustang being another. I really enjoy his performances overall in other films, but he did not fit this one at all. And at points, all the performances felt like the actors thought they were going to be in a colorful, somewhat cheesy and absurd James Gunn film. Instead, they were in an ugly, colorless, lazy sci-fi, which is a shame because I thought that some of the more emotional moments were delivered quite well by the actors. They seemed to have a lot of chemistry in those scenes, and their performances were relatable and emotional, but everything around those parts felt kind of flat. I enjoyed Kara's backstory, but what she was preaching, for the lack of a better term, in the film seemed disconnected from her experiences. I'll get into the details when I start spoiling the film, but the writing seemed disconnected and jumbled to me. However, as I said, I think Millie Alcock can be a great Supergirl in a better film. Eve's character I could live without, to be honest. There was not much to her, and we didn't get to witness her character development at all. So, not saying that she can't be interesting, but you need someone to write a character for her, maybe. Like, one that has a personality beyond I want vengeance or whatever, and some character development maybe for her. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Maybe we could do something with that, you know? Anyway, now I'm going to move on to what I absolutely hated about this film, and it's the visuals. This film is so fucking ugly. People are saying Millie Alcock is ugly. Brother, the movie is ugly. Look at the movie. holy shit, it was bad. In my review of The Mandalorian and Grogu, I was like, it just looks so bad. But oh my god, this one takes the cake in the complete eyesore category. I can't believe they decided to make a sci-fi that takes place on a few different planets and made all of the planets brown, black, and gray mess. Seriously, everything, every single thing is the color of shit. Literally. The production design was ugly, the planets were ugly, even the fucking aliens were mostly gray, like swamp colory. It's just weird. The costumes were also ugly and pretty much indistinguishable from each other. Or maybe it was shot that way and the color correction sucked, so they looked kind of similar to each other. Anyway, it was so monochrome. This is hands down the ugliest movie I've seen in a while. And the lighting, oh my god, there were so many inappropriate lens flares in the film. And in inappropriate, I mean that the flare would be crossing the character's face. The character who was delivering a speech, mind you. We're supposed to feel for the character and get invested in their motivations and relate to her heartbreaking speech, and there's a big ass lens flare concealing half of her face. You can't see her eyes, her facial expressions, nothing. It was so distractingly annoying. I didn't know if those lens flares were intentional, but they certainly looked like a mistake. And speaking of mistakes, the audio. And I'm not even gonna emphasize the amount of ADRs, okay? I'm already used to it. Every movie has them, especially superhero movies. That's not even the main issue. The biggest issue for me was in the beginning of the film. Kara is in a pub or a bar or something, and she uses a jukebox to turn on music. She chooses a song, puts on some music, and starts bopping her head to what was supposed to be the rhythm of the music, you know, to the beat. But it was so obvious that there's no music playing on set because the BPM of the song playing in the film is so much slower than her movement. Holy shit, it was an unacceptable decision to add that song to the film. I don't understand how you could look at it and be happy with the end product. I seriously do not. And don't get me wrong, that single mistake doesn't make or break a film, even for me, who notices auditory mistakes and is extremely sensitive to them. However, decisions like these show me that there was not a lot of thought or care put into the film. And you can make as many capes you want from the original Christopher Reeve's cape, okay?
And the cape, we heard it from you, that it was actually made from the original fabric for Superman.
It was super exciting to get to physically carry a piece of this franchise across to this film.
Doesn't matter if you don't put enough effort into the pre-production, into writing, and into the post-production, it's all lost on me, okay? When every alien race wears similarly colored and similarly styled costumes, when you cannot differentiate creatures from each other, when characters aren't fleshed out, when the lighting is all over the place, when the dancing doesn't match the music, all of these are symptoms to a larger issue. No one cared. This is just a regular ass cash grab, like The Mandalorian and Grogu, just uglier, but still movie structured, unlike the latter. The one thing that I thoroughly enjoyed in the film was Jason Momoa as Lobo. Brother, he should have never been Aquaman, okay? He should have always been Lobo, because he absolutely killed it. Every time he was on screen, it felt like the movie would come alive. His character wasn't fleshed out either, but I feel like I know him better than at least Ruthie, Eve Ridley's character. Now, I'm going to get into some spoilers. If you don't want to hear me talk about some plot points, feel free to skip to the next chapter of the video. So here's your spoiler warning, 3, 2, 1, spoiler alert, okay? So I want to talk about what I already mentioned when it comes to Kara's backstory and how some things don't make sense there. In the beginning of the film, Ruthie's family is brutally murdered by the villain man. I already forgot his name. And so she seeks revenge, right? She wants to kill Matthias Schoenaerts. But Kara, the whole film is like, girl, revenge won't bring you peace. It's not worth it. Trust me. Your anger and grief won't leave you after avenging your family. And as you keep watching the film, you get glimpses of flashbacks into Kara's youth and her story about how Krypton's core exploded or something, and how kryptonite slowly killed the remaining population, and how she was sent to Earth by her parents, right? So here's my question. What the fuck does she know about revenge? The whole film, I was like, I wonder who she exacted her revenge upon, you know, for her parents' death. And it turns out no one. She speaks with such understanding understanding about vengeance that I thought for sure she was speaking from experience, but nope. I guess she was speaking of the nature of grief and mourning from experience, but her preaching about revenge was so uncalled for. And at one point, Lobo asks Ruthie, like, what is it that you seek? You know, what is your goal? And she replies with vengeance. And he just simply goes, ugh, overrated. That was the most believable part of the film. You look at Lobo and you're like, oh yeah, he's totally killed like at least a dozen dudes for just like spilling his whiskey. So when he says overrated about vengeance without going into monologues or without trying to persuade her to abandon her quest, it just feels genuine. But Kara's just talking out of her ass. It makes no sense. And that's why the script feels disconnected in parts. It's just a collection of events, nothing more. None of it is connected. Also, Kara had a potential to be a super interesting character in my opinion with her lifestyle and this inability to belong and this inability to take responsibility. But within like 30 minutes of the film, she's a goody two shoes now. You know, she has the moral compass, she's on the right side, you know, she's great. She does say like, I'm annoyed with you, Ruthie, like you won't leave me alone or whatever, but she still always does the right thing. So I don't know. Why not make her a complex character, please and thank you? Ruthie, as I said, has no personality, no character development, except she doesn't kill the villain man at the end. So Kara has gotten through to her, I guess. Ruthie is a nothing character, so I don't know why she's there. I honestly don't. And one more thing that I want to point out is just the use of weird plot devices, contrived ones, you know? The story begins on a planet with a red sun, which means that Kara doesn't have her powers there. Then they move away to a different planet where she has her powers, but then when she does have her powers, she's too overpowered, okay? So she has to be weakened somehow. Why did we leave the planet with the red sun? Why? Could we not have done a reverse where she starts off on a planet with a yellow sun, kind of kicks some ass if she has to, and then goes to a planet with a red sun where she doesn't have powers, so you don't have to neutralize her in a weird way that adds runtime but doesn't add anything in terms of the story? Why? It was just like too convoluted and transparent. I hate it when I can tell what the writing process was while watching the film. I don't want to think about the writer's motivation when I'm watching a movie. It was clear they wanted to start with drunk Kara. That's why they started with that planet. And then they wanted an action scene with overpowered Kara with all of her powers, right? But also the villain has to get away that time. So let's have her poisoned now. Let's come up with a MacGuffin to incapacitate her for a while. And also, let's have Ruthie be a nuisance. This is not helping me like the characters, writers, and these contrived events are taking me out of the film. And yeah, that's it. There's not much more I want to talk about when it comes to the spoilers. So the spoilers are over, baby. So here's the thing. I was actually thinking about what makes the female-led superhero films so kind of boring and uninteresting, more or less. I mean, I'm not a big fan of any of them. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we have superhero fatigue, okay? We are tired of superheroes unless they're fucking either Fantastic Four, which is different looking, or Thunderbolts, which is an interesting concept, and even though it's visually very bland, you still get interesting characters there, you know? Both of those are ensemble casts, and these characters complement each other really well. But there's also a tendency that I've noticed, and that's prevalent in female-led superhero films. In all cases, the superhero women have a companion throughout the whole movie. Now, male superheroes also have friends, sidekicks, side characters they interact with, but a lot of the times the film is about them and their story or adventure, right? They are the main character through and through. Now, think about superhero films where the superhero is a woman. Wonder Woman is always with Chris Pine, Captain Marvel is with Nick Fury in the first film and the two girls in the second film. I guess Black Widow comes the closest to being the proper main character, but she was already canonically dead when the movie came out, so that fucking sucked. And I'm not even going to go into Madam Web. That's the least of that movie's problems. So yeah, am I missing something? Am I missing any other films? Because I honestly don't know. I gotta say, I don't remember the second Black Panther movie well enough, so maybe that's the exception. But every other woman superhero is stuck with some other main character of the film, as if a woman hero cannot be interesting enough on her own. I gotta say, I agree. Those women were not that interesting because they had no character. Maybe you should try writing a full character, not some half-assed bullshit, and then you won't need to add another underdeveloped character for her to be followed around by. I don't know. Maybe give us a complex character. If Captain America can be made interesting, so can any female superhero ever. Why not do it? Anyway, if you can think of a woman superhero film that defies this trope, please let me know. I personally can't think of any right now. Back to Supergirl for a second. Overall, the film was a disappointment to me. I knew I shouldn't have had my hopes up, but I guess I just want to get a truly well-crafted female-led superhero film. Oh, and I totally forgot to talk about Crypto, who's barely in the film, by the way. I said in my Superman review that there was too little of him there too, but here it's even worse. We get about 5 minutes of dogging total. So, what the hell? Such a shame. Anyway, as you've probably already guessed, I definitely do not recommend watching Supergirl, especially in the cinema, because it's so fucking ugly. It was superficial, unevenly paced, and ugly as all hell. Now, I'm not talking about the woman, by the way. I'm talking about the film, the way the film was shot, okay? The woman is actually quite gorgeous. She's so beautiful. Anyway, these are my thoughts about the film. If you've already seen Supergirl, feel free to let me know what you thought, and if you think I've missed something interesting that I should have talked about. And now, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you're interested in more movie reviews. I'll be reviewing Obsession next week, so stay tuned for that. And if you feel like it, of course. And I'll see you next time. Bye!